story of hope, courage, and the will to live. Two strangers from different parts of the country, Trish Tran, a Vietnamese American from Sacramento, and CJ Kalanok, a Filipino American from Seattle, are now forever connected through the gift of life.
Thank you so much for joining us, Trish Tran, and of course, CJ Kalanok, to tell us about your truly remarkable story. And this is, of course, giving the gift of life, and just how remarkable that you guys met. Two complete strangers from different states meeting and having that moment and really realizing why bone marrow donation is so important. Let's start with you, Trish. Let's start from the time that you were diagnosed with a life-threatening disease, and you were told that, unless you find a donor, then you won't be able to survive. Run us through that, and kind of what was your feeling like when you were in that period in your life?
Yeah, so when I was first diagnosed, there were definitely a lot of restrictions on what I could do now. Since I was a very happy, healthy child before my diagnosis, I now experience a lot of symptoms from my disease. And so I actually was given 3 treatment plans, increasing in intensity, and ultimately a stem cell transplant was my last option for survival. And ultimately the first 2 treatments had failed, and I had no chance left except through a stem cell transplant. But even then, a stem cell transplant was not guaranteed unless I could find a perfectly matched donor. And the physician had told me that because I was of Asian descent, I would have a harder time finding a donor because donors and patients are matched primarily by their ethnicity, since they are more likely to share certain genetic markers. And because of this, I would have a much harder time, since Asian Americans are well underrepresented on the donor registry. So in this time, I was definitely very scared because, my first 2 treatments had failed. I had 1 chance left, and even that was not secured, or it wasn't even guaranteed. So I was definitely scared to know, my life was now in the hands of a stranger that doesn't know me, that may not, be emotionally motivated to partake in such, a selfless act. And so I was definitely anxious because now my symptoms were progressing, my disease was progressing as I was waiting, and there was no light at the end of the tunnel that I could see just yet.
Within the Asian community, there's not a lot of donors. And so that's why, for Asians that need bone marrow donation, it's really a tough time trying to look for that hope, when there's so little to go on. So tell us, CJ, what prodded you to actually register to be a bone marrow donor?
When I was in high school, one of my best friend's brothers actually had a life-threatening disease that was related to bone marrow donation, and also peripheral blood stem cells, which she was talking about earlier. And they were struggling to find a donor to save his life. And it was kind of the same situation that Trish was in, where they have to find a donor, or he's not going to make it. Unfortunately, he's one of the stories, like we were talking about earlier, that just didn't find a match, and unfortunately couldn't make it. So that really just resonated in my heart that I need to donate, I need to register, I need to do whatever I can, because I don't want this happening to someone else, because it was just so devastating, so heartbreaking, because it was avoidable, if granted there was a match. But the underrepresentation of Asians in the registry just made it so much harder just for that chance to even be there.
So people know, CJ, because people may have this idea that to register and to actually go through that process is hard. Was it hard?
No, actually. So I actually registered, and what you do is you just swab your mouth, you send it out, and then you fill out all the information, of course. Then from there, If you become a match, they'll contact you. You undergo physicals, medical evaluations, just to make sure everything's, everything's right. Because there are a lot of different factors that can come into play when donating your body to someone else's, in terms of, rejection rates, or just, you can pass on disease. So they want to make sure that you're 100% good. But after that, yeah, the registration was super simple. You swab your mouth, you mail it in, and then they contact you when there's a match.
Let's talk about having that moment when finally you were told, Trish, that they found a match. What was that like for you? Explain to us kind of that moment when you knew that there's hope.
It was about 5 to 6 months after the doctor had told me that I would need a stem cell transplant from an unrelated match donor. And this was around the time of Christmas. And we had gotten a phone call from the UCSF doctor, and they had said, like, the doctor, my mom puts her on the speaker and she's shaking because she's like, we found a match for you. Like, we're ready to schedule your transplant. Things are in line for your transplant. And the donor is, a perfect match. And it was definitely a very surreal moment because, like I said before, I was very skeptical that I could find a donor because, our Asian population is very underrepresented on the donor registry. But it was a very heartwarming experience because now I could say, there's someone out there, there's a complete stranger somewhere in my community who's willing to do that selfless act, who has been emotionally motivated to take that next step, and is now granting me that gift of life, and is giving me that, light at the end of the tunnel that I was looking for.
So let's talk about the actual transplant itself. How did it go?
Yeah, so a couple days leading up to the transplant. So how it usually works is the donor donates stem cells about 2 to 3 days before I actually receive the stem cells in my transplant. And so I've heard a lot of stories where, the donor backs out at last minute, or there's some complications where the transplant can't go through. So the week leading up to my transplant, I was very nervous, and I was like praying to God, like, please, my donor, please don't, back out. Like, this is my only chance for survival. And if I can't get it from you, my disease is only going to progress. And so, luckily CJ didn't back out. And so, the day of my transplant was definitely an enriching experience because, I had a sense of normalcy in my life again, that I could see my life returning to the way it was, and give a second chance was essentially given to me to fulfill the goals that I wanted in life again.
CJ, let's talk about that moment when you realized that, that simple act that you made when you registered to be a bone marrow donor became this life-changing gift, this life-giving gift. What was that like for you when you realized at that moment that you were really saving Trish's life?
So there's actually two parts to this story. So I donated bone marrow originally to Trish, and 8 weeks later they told me, it wasn't successful, and it was really heartbreaking and soul crushing for me because, I really wanted to do my part, and I was really excited for everything. But the silver lining there is that they told me I could undergo another procedure, which is the peripheral blood stem cell transplant. And that just gave me so much hope and joy, being able to give that second chance again, and hopefully, praying that everything works out, because it's so deeply ingrained in the Filipino culture to help your fellow person, so just being able to do that was just one of the best things that I've ever done. And, without that, it's just, Trish might not be here today. And that's just one of the best feelings in the world, just being able to help someone else, even if it was a stranger, just being able to help someone else was just such a great feeling.
I know it took more than a year for you guys to finally meet. Tell us about that moment that you finally came face to face and just had that opportunity to really talk to each other.
So we were just talking about this earlier. I remember the day that I received the email. It was actually from AADP, and they said, "Hey, do you want to meet your donor?" And I was actually at work that day. And I said, "Hey guys, I gotta go home. This is an emergency." And replied back immediately. I was like, "Yes, I want to meet them." And when I finally got to talk to them and just meet them, they're just such a loving family. I mean, her mom and dad are like the greatest. They're like a second family to me. And meeting Trish, she's just such a brilliant, intelligent, just all around amazing person, and just, yeah, that's one of the most unforgettable moments of my life.
Trish, how about you?
Yeah, so when how the protocol works is after a year of if the transplant is successful, the patient gets the donor's information released to them. And so I remember it was almost a year coming up, and we were bombarding our UCSF physicians on whether they could release the information early. And then we had to wait to the day of, the 1 year. And the physicians finally told us that, a 21-year-old Filipino male had, partaken in this life-saving act, and his name is, CJ. And we finally got his number. And then that night, we scheduled a FaceTime call with CJ. And we were on the FaceTime call, my parents and I behind me. And then as we see the FaceTime going to connecting, and then CJ's face popping up, it was definitely heartwarming because now I could, put a face to the person who actually saved my life. But more uniquely was that CJ specifically was adamant about saving a life because he went through a very, very unique circumstance where he had to donate twice for me. And so it was just very emotional because now I was able to meet that person who was so determined to save a life of someone he didn't know.
Mm-hmm. So after that first meeting, have you guys kept in touch? Have you guys, continued to develop a friendship?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, they actually I flew out from Kentucky to Sacramento, and we did the whole press release with the event and everything. And then after that, her family took my mom and I around all of San Francisco. We've seen each other multiple times since. They came down to San Diego. I've flown up there. I think it was Christmas, right? We spent Christmas together and everything. Yeah, we've had a lot of unforgettable memories and just developing that connection. And like you said earlier, just putting a face to the person and just, really getting to know this person and just everything about it was just so amazing.
What would your message be to people who are still hesitant, who may not know anything really about bone marrow donation? Like, what would your message be to just show them kind of the urgency in taking this step, this simple step that could really lead to more beautiful, bigger things?
My biggest thing is just that I want to clear up is the misconception and like the preconceived notions regarding, donating bone marrow, donating peripheral blood stem cells. For the bone marrow, it is a surgery, but right after the surgery, I stayed in the hospital for 24 hours, and right after that, I was actually in Washington, D.C. at the time, and I went on just all around Washington, D.C. walking, actually recorded 5 miles on that day. The recovery process is just so simple and so smooth. It's like donating blood. 8 weeks after, you have to take it kind of light. You can't do heavy lifting and things like that. But after those 8 weeks are up, you're able to do all your regular activities again, just like you used to. And you're not donating something and losing something permanently. It's not like donating, an organ or anything like that. Everything comes back and, you're back to normal within 8 weeks usually. And yeah, that's the biggest thing I want to really relay is because a lot of people are scared because they hear, oh, bone marrow surgery, this and that. And a lot of people get scared, but it's really not that bad.
You guys have been working with the Asian American Donor Program. Kind of tell us how people can know more about this organization and what this nonprofit organization has really done to help people find that match and help other people give that gift of life.
I've been a part of AADP since I was diagnosed, but more recently, as a new college student, I have actually initiated my own version of AADP at UC Davis. And I've helped UC Davis AADP host drives in the past, and we've taken some hits because of the pandemic. So we aren't able to host as many community events as we needed to encourage donors to, potential donors to enter the registry. And so what I'd advocate for is for you to learn about stem cell transplants, because we often come with a lot of misconceptions from our community, and that may hinder us from joining the registry. But I encourage you to do your own research and find your own emotional motivation to join the registry, because a simple act of a couple hours or a couple days of your time could actually add years to someone's life. And I know, just don't let misconception be the roadblock that stops you from giving that gift.
Wow, thank you so much, guys. Just Wish Foundation and its founder, Mr. Jack Wu, we're really inspired by people like you, like Trish, for you, that you never gave up. When you were told that you were going through this life-threatening disease, you never gave up, you never lost hope. And for you, CJ, to use a sad moment in your life and turn that into action so you could help others have that gift of life. We're truly inspired by you. And Just Wish Foundation would like to support AADP through a monetary donation, because we believe in the cause, and we believe that more and more people should really take that step, because this is a step that is the gift of life, and what better gift to give, right? So thank you so much to both of you. I wish you well. I wish you the best of health, and more power to AADP. Thank you guys for what you do for our community.
The Asian American Donor Program is a 31-year-old nonprofit organization based in Alameda, California, that works to educate community members about the shortage of ethnic marrow donors and the importance of joining the Be the Match National Registry. Individuals are encouraged to register as a potential stem cell donor. Text NorCal API to 61474 or visit my.bethematch.org for more information. Register today to help save a life.